The night I discovered a hidden camera in my own hallway, I thought I was about to catch my husband cheating. I was wrong. The footage showed my husband meeting another woman at 1 a.m. Then a stranger appeared carrying a photograph of my dead father. That was when I realized this wasn't about an affair. Someone had been searching my home for a secret my father had taken to his grave. And the truth about my husband left me in tears. If you were in my position, would you confront your husband immediately or secretly investigate first? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for the full story. The first thing I saw that night was a message on my husband's second phone. She knows about the archive. Don't let her find it. The second thing I saw was my husband standing in our kitchen at 1 in the morning with another woman. My name is Chloe Popescu. I was 34, a restoration architect, and until that week, I thought I knew exactly what kind of man my husband was. Evander Vale was 37. He restored old houses for a living and spent most of his days dealing with contractors, property owners, and government inspectors. He was organized, careful with money, and usually terrible at lying. That last detail mattered more than I understood at the time. We had been married for 6 years. We lived in a narrow 3-story townhouse on Alderwick Street, close enough to the city center that I could walk to my studio when the weather was good. Our life was ordinary. We argued about groceries, forgot to replace light bulbs, watched documentaries before bed, and complained about traffic. Nothing about our marriage prepared me for what I found that Thursday. It started when Evander told me he had a client dinner. "I'll probably be home late," he said that morning. "How late?"
10.
"Maybe 11. "Should I wait up?" He smiled. "Please don't. You have that meeting tomorrow." I kissed him goodbye and went to work. At 8:17 that evening, I unlocked our front door and immediately noticed that the house was too quiet. Evander's car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. What bothered me was the light under his office door. I pushed it open. His coat wasn't there. His briefcase wasn't there. His laptop was gone. But a black phone was charging beside the desk. I had never seen it before. I stood there for several seconds, telling myself it was probably a work phone. Then it buzzed. I looked at the screen. There was no contact name. Only a message. "She knows about the archive. Don't let her find it." My stomach tightened. I picked up the phone. The screen went black. Seriously? I tried to unlock it. Nothing. A second message appeared. "Burn the old plans before she sees them." I dropped the phone onto the desk. At that moment, I heard the front door open. Evander was home. I walked into the hallway. He froze when he saw me. "You're home early," he said. I looked at the clock. "It's after 8. I meant you're usually upstairs by now." He glanced toward his office. I noticed it immediately. His eyes went to the phone, then back to me. "What is that?" "Your phone." "No." His answer came too quickly. I stared at him. He walked into the office and picked it up. "It's an old company phone. Why does it have messages about an archive?" His face changed. Only for a second. But I saw it. "What archive?" I folded my arms. "That's what I'm asking." He put the phone in his pocket. "Chloe, I have no idea what you're talking about. It was the first time I knew my husband was lying to me.
I just didn't know why."
The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. That bothered me more than the lie. He made coffee. He complained about a supplier. He asked whether I had enough time to finish the drawings for my presentation. Finally, I asked, "Who was texting you last night?" "No one." "You said the phone was an old company phone." "It is." "Then why were you nervous?" He put down his cup. "I'm not nervous." "You are." He sighed. "Chloe, I had a complicated client situation. That's all." "Then tell me about it." "I can't." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because it's confidential." I almost laughed. "You've never used confidentiality as an excuse with me." He stood. "I'll explain later." Then he kissed my forehead and left. I watched him walk out. Something had changed. I just didn't know whether it had happened inside my marriage or somewhere outside it. That afternoon, I noticed another strange thing. The hallway clock had been moved. It was an old brass clock my mother had given us after our wedding. I knew exactly where it belonged because the wall behind it had a small scratch from when we first hung it. Now it sat several inches to the left. I moved it back. There was a tiny black mark on the wall. I leaned closer. A pinhole. I touched it. Then I heard my phone ring. It was Evander. "Hey," he said. "Did you move the hallway clock?" Silence.
What?
The clock.
No.
I looked at the wall again. Okay.
Why?
I was just asking. Another pause. "Chloe, don't touch anything in the hallway." My hand stopped. Why? "I'll explain tonight." He ended the call. That was when I called a security technician. His name was Dorian Kess. He arrived at 5:30 that evening carrying a black equipment case. He was in his 40s, quiet and professional. "Our front camera has been dropping recordings," I explained. "Power issue." "Maybe." It happened twice. He checked the exterior camera, then the router, then the wiring. After an hour, he frowned. "Someone tampered with the system." Someone. Looks like the recording loop was manually interrupted. "Can you fix it?"
Yes.
"But I'd like to install a temporary indoor camera while I test the network." I hesitated. "Where?" "Hallway. It won't record audio." I agreed. He mounted the small camera near the staircase. Before leaving, he said, "If anything unusual happens, save the footage immediately. These systems overwrite old files." I nodded. At the time, I thought he was simply being careful. I didn't realize that camera would change my understanding of my husband. That night, Evander came home at 10:46. I was sitting on the sofa.
He stopped when he saw me.
"You waited?" "Yes." He loosened his tie. "How was your meeting?" "Fine." "With whom?" "Two investors." "Names?"
He stared at me.
"Why are you interrogating me?" "I'm trying to understand why you lied." "I didn't lie." "You said you'd explain." "I said I'd explain later." "And now?" He walked toward the kitchen. "Now I'm tired." I followed him. "Who is Mireya Sloan?" He stopped. The name had come from an email I had accidentally seen that afternoon. Mireya was the operations manager of his company.
You know her, he said.
"Do I?" "She's worked with me for 8 months." "Why did she come to our house last Tuesday?" He turned around. "She didn't. I saw her car." His expression hardened. "You're mistaken." That answer hurt more than I expected. I had never been jealous of Mireya. I had barely thought about her. She was confident, sharp, and always dressed like she had somewhere important to be. But now I wondered why she had been outside our house. I went upstairs without saying anything else. At 1:13 a.m., I woke up. The other side of the bed was empty. I heard voices downstairs. A woman's voice. I recognized it immediately. Mireya. I quietly opened the bedroom door and walked toward the stairs. "She can't know about Belgrave," Mireya whispered. Evander answered. "I know. You promised me." "I promised I would protect Chloe." "Then tell her the truth." "I can't." I gripped the railing. Mireya's voice became sharper. "If she finds the archive, everything falls apart." I stepped backward. My heel touched the floorboard. It creaked. The voices stopped. I ran back into the bedroom. Seconds later, the door opened. Evander stood there. "Chloe?" I pretended to be asleep. He remained in the doorway. Then, he quietly closed it. I waited until his footsteps disappeared. I didn't sleep again. At 6:30, I went downstairs. Mireya was gone. Evander was making coffee. I looked directly at him. Was Mireya here?
No.
My chest tightened. "You're lying."
He looked at me.
"Chloe." "She was downstairs." He said nothing. I walked away before I started crying. At work, I could barely concentrate. Belgrave. Archive. Mireya. The words kept repeating in my head. My father had once worked on Belgrave Municipal Theater. Lucian Popescu had been a structural engineer. He died 11 years earlier, in what everyone called a car accident. I had never connected his work to Evander's company. That afternoon, I searched the old project records. Belgrave appeared in a folder dated 3 months before my father's death. There was a note beside his name. Inspection incomplete. I stared at the screen. My father had told me that the Belgrave project had been finished. So, why did the official record say otherwise? At 7:20 that evening, I returned home. Evander wasn't there. The house was silent. I opened the security system on my laptop. Dorian had given me temporary access. The camera had recorded everything. I skipped through the footage. Nothing. Me leaving. Me returning. The empty hallway. Then I saw a timestamp. 1:07 a.m. I clicked it. Evander entered the hallway. Mireia followed him. They stood beneath the brass clock. Evander looked directly toward the camera. Then Mireia touched the clock. They moved it. Behind it was a tiny compartment in the wall. Evander reached inside. He removed a flat brown envelope. I stopped breathing. I rewound the footage. Again. And again. Then someone else appeared at the end of the hallway. A man. He wore a dark jacket and carried a gray document box. He walked toward Evander and Mireia. But before he reached them, he stopped. He looked straight into the camera. Then he smiled. I enlarged the image. My hands began to shake. The man was wearing a silver ring with a black stone. I knew that ring. My father had owned one exactly like it, but my father had been dead for 11 years. And the next morning, when I searched the footage again, the man's face was gone. Someone had deleted that part of the recording. Only one frame remained. In that frame, the man was holding a photograph. I zoomed in. It was a picture of my father standing outside Belgrave Theater. And written across the bottom were 5 words. Chloe must never see this. The frame stayed on my screen long after I stopped breathing normally. My father was standing outside Belgrave Theater, younger than I remembered him, holding a folder against his chest. Beside him stood the same man from my hallway footage. I had spent 11 years believing my father's death was an accident. Now a stranger was looking into my house through a hidden camera while holding a photograph of him. I closed the laptop. Then I heard the front door unlock. Evander was home. I didn't tell him what I had found. Instead, I smiled and asked, "How was your evening?" I stood there, unable to decide which frightened me more, the fact that my husband had kept this from me, or the fact that somebody had entered our house looking for the same documents. For the first time, I understood that whatever had happened 11 years ago had not stayed in the past. Someone was still protecting it, and someone was still afraid I would uncover it. He looked at me for a second too long. Fine. That was our new language. Short answers. Delayed questions. Things we both knew were false. An hour later, Evander went upstairs to shower. I waited. Then I opened his office. I found nothing except invoices and old contracts. Then I noticed a locked wooden box beneath the desk. Tonight, I tried the key from his desk drawer. It opened. Inside was a stack of architectural plans. The top sheet carried a familiar name. Belgrave Municipal Theater. My father's signature appeared at the bottom. I sat down. Several sections had been marked in red. One note read, "North Wall, do not approve." Another said, "Documents removed before final inspection." I heard footsteps upstairs. I quickly photographed the pages and returned everything. When Evander came back, I was in the kitchen. He kissed my cheek. I almost pulled away. "Can I ask you something?"
Sure.
"Did my father ever work with you?" His face became still. "Where did that come from?" "Just answer." "Not directly." "Did you know Belgrave?" "Yes." "Did you know my father?" He looked down. "Chloe, this isn't the conversation to have tonight." "Then when?" He said nothing. That silence gave me an answer. At 11:40 p.m., I received an email from an unknown address. There was one attachment, a photograph of Evander and Mireia inside Belgrave Theater. The message said, "Ask your husband what happened beneath the north wall. And ask him why your father's name was removed from the final report." The next morning, I drove to Belgrave. I introduced myself to the site supervisor, Nessa Calder. When I said Lucian Popescu, she stopped writing. "You knew him?" "Not personally, but I know his work." "Did he inspect this building?" "Yes." "Was there a problem?" Nessa looked toward the theater. "There was a problem with the north wall." My pulse quickened. "What kind?" "Structural instability." "Then why was the building approved?" That is what nobody could explain. She took me into a temporary site office and pulled an old inspection file from a cabinet. The original report was missing several pages, but Nessa had photocopies. The final page carried another signature, Marceline Quaid. I recognized the name immediately. She had been my father's solicitor and had handled his estate after his death. Why did she sign an engineering report? She didn't. She signed the amended version. Amended by whom? That part was never documented. I looked at the dates. The amendment had been filed 2 days after my father's funeral. Someone had changed his report after he was dead. Nessa lowered her voice. Your father came here the night before his accident. Alone?
No.
Who was with him? Corbin Dast. What did they argue about? I don't know. But your father was angry. Before I could ask anything else, a black sedan stopped outside. Nessa looked through the window. You should leave.
Why?
That car has been here 3 times this week. As I reached my car, my phone rang. Evander, where are you? At Belgrave. Chloe, go home. You knew my father was here. Please. What happened to him? I'll tell you when I get home.
No.
Tell me now. I can't. The call ended. When I returned home, Evander was waiting. Mireia was with him. I think you deserve the truth, she said. Evander looked at her. You promised. I promised not to reveal the archive. I never promised to let Chloe walk into this blind. I stared at them. What archive? Mireia placed a folder on the table. Your father discovered a fraud scheme, she said. Who was involved? Several people. Names. Corbin Dast was one of them. I looked at Evander. You knew? Yes. For how long? For months. For months. I was trying to find proof before telling you. You lied to me every day. I was trying to keep you safe. Mireia interrupted. Someone has been following you. I turned toward her. How do you know? Because I was watching them. Why were you watching me? She looked at Evander. Then back at me. Because your husband asked me to. The lights went out. A crash came from the office. Evander grabbed my hand. Stay here.
No.
He moved toward the hallway. We heard a door slam, then footsteps running outside. The lights returned. The wooden box beneath Evander's desk was open. The Belgrave plans were gone. But the thief had left something behind. A small brass key. Attached to it was a paper tag. Storage Unit 19. I picked it up. Evander stared at it. That's impossible. Why? I thought it was destroyed. Mireia looked at him. You knew about Unit 19? He nodded. We arrived at the storage facility near the Eastern Rail Yard before midnight. The manager was an older man named Oren Bellamy. He looked at the key in my hand, then at my face. Your father told me this day would come. He unlocked the gate. Inside Unit 19 were 6 sealed boxes. On the first one, written in my father's handwriting, were 4 words. For Chloe. Open last. I stared at the label. Then I heard the lock click behind us. Someone had just closed the storage unit from the outside. And Oren Bellamy was no longer standing beside us. The lock clicked behind us. Then Oren Bellamy's voice came through the metal door. I'm sorry, Chloe. I looked at Evander. You know him. I know of him. That is not what I asked. Mireia grabbed a box. Argue later. Oren had locked us inside Unit 19. There were no windows. Only a narrow ventilation grate. I grabbed the handle. Oren, open this. No answer. The lights went out. Mireia switched on her phone. Stay calm. Evander dragged a shelf beneath the grate. Mireia grabbed the smallest box and threw it at the door. Nothing. Then we heard a car start outside. Oren was leaving. I pressed my forehead against the door. Why would my father trust him? He didn't. I turned. He suspected Oren. Then why did he have access? Mireia asked. Your grandfather? He nodded. We forced the ventilation grate loose and reached the service corridor. 20 minutes later, we were outside. Oren was gone. You said you didn't know him. I said I knew of him. You knew enough to know he could lock us in a room. I didn't know he would do this. Then start telling me things. Oren worked with your father, Mireia said. Doing what? Tracking property transfers.
Why?
Your father's buildings were being bought through shell companies. By whom? Corbin Dast. The name was becoming familiar. Corbin had owned several construction firms years ago. His companies had handled restoration contracts throughout the city. What did he want from my father? The inspection reports. Mireya opened one of the boxes we had carried outside. Inside were photocopies, photographs, and handwritten notes. My father's handwriting was everywhere. I picked up a photograph of Belgrave before renovation. The date was 3 days before my father's death. Another showed a black sedan outside. The plate belonged to Marceline Quaid, my father's solicitor. Why was she following him? Evander said nothing. I turned toward him. You knew this too? Yes. How long? Since I found the first file. And you still said nothing. I didn't know who I could trust. He rubbed his face. I was afraid you'd walk straight toward the danger. I opened another folder. Inside was a letter from my father. The first line made my hands go cold. Chloe, if this reaches you, then the people I feared have found the archive. I read on. He explained that the archive contained evidence of fraudulent property transfers and falsified inspections. He had hidden the most important records separately because he believed someone in his legal team was helping Corbin. He named one person, Marceline. She was involved.
Probably, Mireya said.
Your father never said she was responsible, only that he no longer trusted her. I kept reading. Then I reached the final paragraph. Do not trust anyone who tells you they are protecting you. Protection without truth becomes another form of control. That sentence stayed with me, because Evander had been saying exactly that. That night, we stayed at Mireya's 6th-floor apartment overlooking the river because I refused to return to the townhouse. Mireya made coffee. Evander sat across from me. I placed the letter between us. My father knew someone was watching him. Yes. And you knew? Yes. Why did you marry me? Evander stared at me. The question surprised him. What does that have to do with this? Everything. He took a long breath. I loved you before I knew about your father's investigation. That isn't an answer.
No.
It isn't. He looked at Mireya. She nodded. Then he finally told me something he had never said before. His grandfather had been Lucian Popescu's closest friend. After my father's death, his grandfather had made a promise to him. If anything happens to Lucian, watch over Chloe. Evander had grown up hearing my name, but he didn't meet me until years later. When we fell in love, he didn't know the full reason his grandfather had kept records about my family. He discovered that part only 4 months earlier. I walked to the window. You knew my family before I knew yours. I know. Our whole marriage was built around a secret. It wasn't. How can I know that? If I had married you for the archive, I would have left when I realized it wasn't in your possession. What if you still want it? I want you alive. For the first time, I believed him. Then Mireya's phone rang. Her face changed. They found Oren. Where? At Belgrave. We drove there immediately. Oren was gone. His abandoned vehicle was in the basement. Beside it was a briefcase containing a single document, a property transfer bearing my father's signature. The date was 11 years old. I looked at it. This is fake. The officer checked the date. My father's death certificate showed he died 2 days before the transfer. Then someone forged the signature, the officer said. But why? Before anyone could answer, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice said, Chloe, stop looking for your father's archive. Who are you? You already know me. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. Then I heard Mireya whisper my name. She was looking toward the upper balcony. A woman stood there. Marceline Quaid. She was holding a folder and smiling at me. I ran upstairs. By the time I reached the balcony, she was gone. Only the folder remained. Inside was a photograph of my father with another man. The man was younger, but I recognized him. Oren Bellamy. On the back, my father's handwriting said, Oren knows who killed me. I read the sentence twice. Then I noticed something else. There was a second line beneath it, but he is not the man who ordered it. I looked at Evander. Someone had been hiding the truth about my father's death for 11 years. And now I knew there were at least 2 people behind it. The next clue was inside Belgrave Theater. I knew exactly where to look. The north wall. The north wall looked ordinary from the outside. That was what made it frightening. I stood beneath the old stone arch at Belgrave Theater with Evander and Maria behind me, staring at the section my father had marked in red 11 years earlier. "Are you sure?" Evander asked.
No.
But my father was. It was almost midnight. Rain had started falling, and the construction crew had gone home. Only emergency lights remained on inside the theater. We entered through the side door. The basement was cold. Pipes crossed the ceiling, and work lamps lit piles of removed bricks. "There," I said. A section of mortar looked newer than the rest. Evander examined it. "Someone opened this recently." My heart sank. Mireia crouched beside him. "There are fresh shoe marks." We removed 3 loose bricks. Behind them was a narrow cavity. Inside sat a metal cylinder. I pulled it out. There was no ledger, only a roll of architectural film and a brass key. The key had a number stamped into it. 19. Unit 19? I asked. "No," Mireia said. "Belgrave's original archive room." I looked at Evander. "Where is that?" He pointed toward the floor. "Below us." We found the entrance behind an old electrical panel. The staircase was narrow and dusty. Halfway down, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Chloe. Marceline." "You know where you're going," she said. "Then tell me the truth. Your father made one mistake."
What?
"He trusted the wrong man." "Oren."
No.
The call ended. I looked at Evander. "Who is the wrong man?" He didn't answer. At the bottom was a steel door. The brass key fit perfectly. Inside was a small archive room. Shelves lined the walls, most of them empty. The first box held property deeds. The second contained reports. The third held photographs. Then I found a folder labeled with my father's name. Inside was a typed statement. On October 14th, I discovered that 3 properties approved for restoration had already been transferred through shell companies. Mireia took the page. "Keep going." The transfers were authorized using forged signatures from deceased property owners. I believe the person arranging these transfers has access to my legal files. Marceline. The final page contained a list of initials.
CD.
MQ. OB. And one more.
EV.
I dropped the paper. Evander went completely still. Mireia looked at him. "What does EV mean?" "I don't know." I backed away. "You expect me to believe that?" "Yes." "You found these files 4 months ago." "I did." "And you never saw this?"
No.
"Why would my father write your initials?" "I don't know." Then Evander reached into his coat. I flinched. Slowly, he pulled out a folded note. "My grandfather gave me this when I was 21. The handwriting belonged to Evander's grandfather. If Chloe ever discovers the archive, give her this. Tell her Evie was never the name she should fear." I looked at him. "Then why are the initials here?" "I don't know." Mireia suddenly pulled another folder from the shelf. Inside was an employee list from my father's engineering firm. One name was circled. Elias Vane. My father had written beside it. Former accountant. Disappeared after Belgrave audit. I stared at the page. The initials had another meaning. Mireia opened another file. Inside was a bank transfer. The recipient was Elias Vane. The sender was Marceline Quaid. The date was the day before my father's death. "So she paid him," I whispered. "We need to find him," Evander said. A noise came from the corridor. Footsteps. We turned off the lights. Someone entered the archive room. A flashlight moved across the shelves. Then a voice said, "I know you're here."
Oren.
He stepped into the room. His jacket was wet, his hands shaking. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said. "Then tell us who killed my father," I said. "I didn't kill Lucian." "I know." "Who ordered the sabotage?" He opened his mouth. A gunshot exploded from the corridor. Oren collapsed. Mireia screamed. Evander pulled me behind a shelf. Another shot struck the metal door. Then silence. Oren was still alive.
Barely.
I crawled toward him.
Who?
He grabbed my wrist. Your father's solicitor. Marceline? He shook his head.
No.
The solicitor wasn't the mastermind. His breathing became shallow. Your father trusted him.
Who?
Oren's lips moved. I leaned closer. Celine. I froze. The name meant nothing. Then I remembered the note from Unit 19. My father had written that the archive was meant for me. Beneath his signature was another name. Celine Arkwright. Before I could ask anything else, Oren closed his eyes. Sirens sounded outside. When the police arrived, the shooter was gone. So was the film cylinder. Someone had entered the archive room and taken the one piece of evidence that could prove what happened to my father. We returned to the townhouse just before dawn. I couldn't sleep. At 6:12 a.m., I searched my father's old family records. There was no Celine Arkwright. No connection. Nothing. Then I remembered something from my childhood. Every year on my father's birthday, a woman left a white envelope at our front door. My mother always said it was from a friend. I had never seen her face. I searched an old box in the attic. Inside were 11 envelopes. Each one had been opened by my mother. The last envelope was still sealed.
My name was written on it.
I opened it. There was one sentence. Chloe, if you are reading this, Celine is the only person who knows where I hid the original ledger. I stared at the page. Then Evander appeared behind me. Chloe. He was holding his phone. Someone just sent me a location. Where? A coastal town 2 hours away. Beneath the address was a message. Come before noon. Celine has the ledger. I looked at the clock. 6:18. At last, we had a destination. But when I looked at the sender's number, I recognized the final 4 digits. They belonged to my father's old office telephone, a number that had been disconnected 11 years ago. The number on Evander's phone had been disconnected for 11 years. I had called my father's office after his death. Yet that number had sent us a location. We left the house at 6:31 a.m. Vermont was 2 hours away. Rain covered the windshield, and nobody spoke for 40 minutes. Finally, I said, if this is a trap, we need to know who benefits. Mireya looked at me through the mirror. Whoever has the ledger. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I have. Evander tightened his hands around the steering wheel. I should have told you everything months ago. I looked at him. Yes. I thought I could find the people involved before they reached you. And did you?
No.
Then your plan failed. He nodded. I know. The address led to a small house overlooking the harbor. It belonged to Celine Arkwright. I knocked. An elderly woman opened the door. Lucian's daughter. My throat tightened. You knew my father? Very well. She stepped aside. Come in. Framed photographs covered one wall. One showed my father beside a young woman. I recognized her from one of my mother's old envelopes. That's you. Celine nodded. I worked with your father. Why did he never mention you? Because mentioning me would have put me in danger. From whom? She looked at Evander. From the people still looking for it. She led us into a study. A ledger sat inside a locked wooden case. I stopped. Is that it? Yes. I reached for it. Celine caught my wrist. Before you open it, you need to know something. What? Your father did not die because of the inspection reports. I stared at her. Then why? He discovered someone was using his name to transfer properties. Marceline? She helped them, but she wasn't in charge. Who was? Celine hesitated. Your father's business partner. My father didn't have a business partner.
He did.
Your mother knew him. The room seemed to shrink. My mother? Your mother believed he was a harmless investor. Name. Corbin Dast. I felt a wave of anger. Corbin was my father's partner? Not officially. He financed several projects. Evander stepped forward. Then why did Lucian investigate him? Because Corbin began buying the same properties your father had marked unsafe. I opened the ledger. The pages listed properties, payments, initials. CDMQOB. Then another name appeared.
LP.
My initials. I looked at Celine. What does this mean? Your father added it after he realized the archive could be used against you. I turned the page. A photograph fell out. It showed my father, Corbin, Marceline, and a fourth man. I recognized him immediately. Elias Vane, the missing accountant. Behind the photograph was a handwritten note. Elias is not missing. He is hiding.
My phone rang.
Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice said, "Ask your husband why his grandfather lied about your father." The call ended. I turned to Evander. He looked pale. What did your grandfather know? Everything. Everything. My grandfather was the one who helped your father hide the archive. Then why didn't you tell me? Because he made me swear. You're still doing it. He looked down. I was afraid. He was afraid of the truth. Suddenly, the front window shattered. Mireia pulled me to the floor. Another shot struck the wall. Celine moved faster than any of us expected. She opened a concealed panel beneath the bookshelf. Downstairs.
Now.
We followed her into a narrow passage. The passage led to an old boathouse. How many exits? 2. Then we used the water. We ran toward the dock. Behind us, someone entered the house. I looked back. A figure stood in the doorway. It was Marceline. She wasn't holding a gun. She was holding a photograph. "Chloe," she shouted. "You have to listen to me." Evander pulled me toward the boat. "Don't." Marceline yelled again. "Your father trusted me." I stopped. Celine grabbed my arm. "Don't believe her." "Why?" "Because she is the reason I disappeared." That was the first time Celine looked afraid. We escaped by boat. 20 minutes later, we reached an abandoned marina. Police were waiting. Mireia had called them before we left. Marceline was arrested at the house. I thought the nightmare might be ending. I was wrong. At the station, investigator Rhea Moreland examined the ledger. She turned pale. "Where did you get this?" "Celine gave it to me." "Celine Arkwright?" "Yes." Rhea looked at the other officers. Then she closed the ledger. "Chloe, this isn't the original." I stared at her. "What?" "It's a copy." "How do you know?" "I've seen the original." "Where?" She pointed to the final page. A handwritten code was written beneath my father's signature. Rhea translated it. "The original is with the person who ordered Lucian's death." I felt cold. "Who?" Rhea looked directly at Evander. He stood completely still. Then she said something that changed everything. "The name in the original ledger is not Corbin Dast." She turned the page. "It's Evander Vale's father." Evander's face went white. "My father died 8 years ago." "I know," Rhea said. "Then how could he have ordered it?" Rhea opened a sealed evidence envelope. Inside was a recording from 11 years ago. My father's voice came through the speaker. "If anything happens to me, don't trust my partner." Then another voice answered. A voice I recognized. It belonged to Evander's grandfather. "I'll take care of Chloe." The recording ended. I looked at my husband. His eyes were full of shock. Then his phone vibrated. One new message. "You finally know what your family did. Now, ask Chloe what her mother hid." I read it twice. My mother. A part of the story I had never questioned was suddenly the next secret. And for the first time, I wondered whether my father had been protecting me from my enemies, or from my own family. For 11 years, I believed my mother was the safest person in my family. That belief ended when Rhea Moreland placed the recording on the table. "Listen carefully," she said. My father's voice filled the room. "If anything happens to me, don't trust my partner." Then my grandfather-in-law's voice answered. "I'll take care of Chloe." The recording ended. I looked at Evander. "My mother," I said. "What did she hide?" He shook his head. "I don't know." Rhea closed the evidence file. "Then find out before somebody else does." We left the station near midnight. Celine stayed with investigators. Mireia drove because Evander was too shaken to concentrate. I sat in the back seat, holding the copy of my father's ledger. For months, I thought the secret concerned my father's work. Now it reached my mother. When we arrived at my old home, I stood outside. The current owner let us search the attic after Rhea showed him the investigation documents. I went straight to an old cedar trunk. Inside were photographs, school certificates, and my mother's letters. Nothing seemed unusual. Then I found an envelope taped beneath the lid.
My name was written on it.
Chloe, open this only if Lucian's archive is found. My hands shook. Inside was a key and a note. Your father never trusted the office. He trusted the house. Look beneath the third stair. We went downstairs. The third stair had been repaired years earlier. I removed the loose wooden strip. A narrow compartment appeared. Inside was a cassette and a small notebook. The notebook was my mother's. The first entry was dated 3 months before his death. Lucian knows about the transfers. I know who is helping Corbin. I am afraid he will confront him. I turned the page. Marceline came to the house today. She says she can make the problem disappear. Lucian refused. Another page. Elias Vane has copies of everything. If Lucian dies, Elias will know where the original ledger is. Then the final entry. I made a terrible mistake. I gave Marceline access to the family files because I believed she was protecting Chloe. I froze. That was it. The connection. My mother had trusted Marceline. Marceline had gained access to my father's records. But there was more. A sentence had been crossed out repeatedly. I held the notebook under the light. Enough ink remained to read it. The person Corbin fears most is not Lucian.
It is.
The rest had been torn away. Evander found the cassette. We bought an old cassette player from a 24-hour shop. Back at the townhouse, I played it. Static filled the room. Then my mother's voice. If Chloe hears this, I need her to know I never betrayed her father. I looked up. I was told Lucian planned to expose everyone. I believed Marceline when she said the people involved would kill Chloe. Evander reached for my hand. I let him. My mother's voice became quieter. Lucian discovered what I had done. We argued the night before he died. He told me there was one person we had both underestimated. The tape crackled. His name is Oren Bellamy. I opened my eyes.
Oren.
The man who had locked us in Unit 19. The man who had known my father. The man who had been shot at Belgrave. The recording continued. Oren was not working for Corbin. He was working for someone inside the family. The tape stopped. I stared at the player. Someone inside the family. Evander's phone rang. It was Rhea. Chloe, where are you? Home. Leave immediately.
Why?
We recovered Marceline's phone. What did you find? She sent one message before her arrest. To whom? Rhea hesitated. To a number registered to your mother. I couldn't speak. My mother is dead. I know. What did the message say? Rhea read it aloud. The daughter has the ledger. Begin the final step. I looked at Evander. Someone is using my mother's number. Or someone has had access to it, he said. We searched the house. Nothing. Then I noticed the brass hallway clock. The same clock that had started everything. I removed it from the wall. Behind it was a second compartment. Inside was a photograph. My mother stood beside Marceline. Behind them was a man I had never seen before. Except I had. He was in the first hidden camera footage. The man wearing my father's ring. On the back of the photograph was a date. The day after my father's funeral. And beneath it, my mother's handwriting. He came for the ledger. I gave him the wrong one. My heart started racing. That meant my mother had known the man. She had deliberately given him a false archive. And the original had survived. I searched the notebook again. A page number had been circled. Page 47. I turned to it. Only one sentence was written. The original ledger is not hidden in a building. It is hidden in a person. I looked at Evander. What does that mean? Before he could answer, the door opened. Maria walked in. She was alone. You need to come with me, she said. Why? Because I found Elias Vane. I stood. Where? Outside the city. Is he alive? Yes. What does he know? Mireya looked at Evander. He says your father did not die because of the archive. My stomach dropped. Then why? He says your father died because he was about to expose the person who controlled the entire operation. Who? Mireya swallowed. He gave me a name. She handed me a folded paper. I opened it. The name on the page was one I had heard every day as a child. Adrian Popescu. My father's brother. My uncle. But Adrian had supposedly died 8 years before my father. I stared at it. Mireia whispered, "He's alive." Silence filled the room. Someone knocked 3 times on the front door. We all turned. A man's voice came from outside. "Chloe, it's time you heard what your father never told you." I knew the voice. It was Adrian, and he had come back for the ledger.